Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Whiskey, Grits, and Honey. I am being co-hosted with my great friend Kendall. We met her earlier with an episode that she did earlier this year, and we are with our friend Kathryn, who's also an educator. The three of us have attended a similar conference. It's called Educating Children of Color. So we're going to debrief that and talk about some of the under and misdiagnosis of children of color. So Kathryn and Kendall, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for letting me listen in. This is Kendall. I'm not an educator, but I really love educator shop talk. So I'm just here to be nosy.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So, Kathryn, can you give us just a small bio about yourself, what you do, your role in education, all that great stuff?
Sure. So I'm originally from Virginia, not far from Richmond, and we lived there, and I went to Bluefield College. It's a university now. And then we lived in Richmond, and I taught alternative school in the city. And then I worked for Virginia Commonwealth University as a researcher. And then my husband and I had a chance to move to Colorado. So we came, lived on the Front Range for 7 years, and I taught in a variety of settings there. Next to a military base, which was a really cool intersection of education from all over. And then I also became a reading specialist while I got my master's degree at University of Colorado, Colorado Springs with educational leadership. And so then our family moved to the Western Slope, and I'm now an assistant principal, and I work for district for emergency things. And so we've just resettled on the Western Slope with my husband and our two kids, two boys, 5 and 3. So it's a busy time figuring out how education meets with my life now.
Nice. Yeah, it seems that like our lives revolve around education now, which I still wouldn't trade it for anything.
I wouldn't either. It's like the most important job there is. It's like a lifestyle.
I completely agree. I was just having this conversation the other day, how like being a teacher is just like a lifestyle. People are like, oh, that's all you think and talk about. And I'm like, yeah, and I wouldn't trade it. It's like, why don't you?
Right? Like there are openings.
Yeah, please. Honestly, subs, do something.
Anything, please.
Hello from a substitute.
So what inspires you to get into education?
Well, I'm very selfish, Corey. I love learning, and the best way to really like learn something is getting to teach it too. And then just that super cliche light bulb moment when kids learn something, it is addictive. And it's addictive when it's that light bulb moment for academics and then for behavior. And then when you get both on the same day, it is just an adrenaline rush. And so, right? I mean, I don't have to explain it to you. You're in this. So it's great. And then I realized I get bored, and there's nothing boring about teaching ever. And then just when you think, oh, I totally got this, it's time to change grades. It's time to change something. Yes. And so it's cool, right? Like you get to like keep learning over and over again. So I love it.
Yeah. Actually, next week we've got a week full of professional development, so there are going to be tons of like skills and stuff. Yeah, that I would definitely be learning. So I'm really looking forward to that. So, could you tell us kind of just like a brief summary of like what ECOC is, what your experience with it was, and Kendall, that was the same one that you attended with, correct?
It is, yes.
Cool. So if you would like to type on too, and just your experience with ECOC.
I was really lucky. I got to hook her into it.
Right.
We lived on the Front Range, and in Colorado Springs, there's Colorado College right in the center of it. And it's a really just aesthetically beautiful school, as well as a great resource in the middle of town where people can come for professional development. And so Educating Children of Color is a summit that's annual, and they have student elements to it that can end up getting connected to scholarships. You can get professional development hours. You can, some school districts will reimburse your registration fee or whatever. And it has people from all over the United States come and speak, and it is phenomenal. Obviously with COVID, they went online, and you have to be safe. So the transition was different, but it's pretty incredible. When I worked on the Front Range, I was really fortunate to work for Harrison School District 2. And there's a very high population of students of color and staff of color. And so it was really powerful to get to attend together and figure out, okay, where are we not connecting? Where do we need to connect? What do we need to learn here? And so it's really cool because it's become really a part of the town. And it's really cool to see people from the community. And there are other professionals that go too, judges, lawyers, police officers. It's open. And I think you get to geek out with other people too, which is my favorite. And so, Kendall, you got to come in too.
Yeah, I went to Educating Children of Color. I was able to make the case for it to my boss because I had been using their resources for a couple of years. I wish I could find it on my computer at the moment, but just a fun aside, I have learned so much. So in a previous job, I did a lot of group facilitation and leadership development and equity work. And I got the most helpful information and skills from teachers on how to work with groups, how to develop leadership, how to make sure that what you think you're doing is what you're actually doing. And I wish I could tell that to everyone who might have a nonprofit job, that you should take a classroom management course. Because really, yeah, like it felt like a shortcut. All the trainings I've been to on facilitation and team building, all I really needed to do was talk to a couple of my teacher friends a couple of times. And that gave me more than 50 different trainings combined. So I've been using Kathryn's resources. And by that, I mean saying, Kathryn, this is what's happening at work. What do I do? For years. And so even though I'm not an educator and I was in Virginia, not Colorado, these resources being so helpful helped me make a case to actually go to this teachers conference. Half of the country away. The thing that I used from Educating Children of Color before I ever went in person was there were these 2 handouts on how to build a culturally inclusive classroom. And at a former job, we were doing a teen program with students that we didn't meet before the program started. And it was just a 2-week summer program. And 2 handouts from this conference gave me, again, working with teachers, it's a complete shortcut. It gave me such a shortcut on building relationships and rapport with these teens. And I had seen, it was a program we had adapted and adopted from another organization. And I had seen them run it and seen a lot of conflicts that I can see now were cultural. And at the time were just like, wow, this white facilitator is really about to fight with this Black student over earbuds. Okay, this is interesting. And here's Kathryn covering her face in bemusement. Kathryn, I'm sure you've never seen white teachers really drop the ball like this. And so, seeing this teen program in another organization's hands, I saw things that I didn't like, and I didn't know how to describe what I was seeing. Kathryn went to this Educating Children of Color conference and told me some of the things she'd learned. I went on their website and downloaded everything they had available for downloads. And it gave me a way to understand what I had seen and not liked. And it gave me a different place to start from. There were specific things about let your students bring their own knowledge, their own culture, their own background into the classroom. And they had specific techniques for that. But I think overall, it's being willing to step outside yourself and what you think professional and respect means. So that's a long-winded answer.
No, I think that was perfect. And it kind of segues right into the next question. But I love the point that you made about cultural differences in the classroom and the specific example about the earbuds. So, Kathryn, I'm pursuing my EDD, and one of the biggest things I want to study is the school to prison pipeline, and just engaging students of color and finding alternatives to some of the behavior issues. And the article I just read this week was about how African American girls are often left out of the school to prison pipeline because they focus so much on African American boys. So it's hearing their stories and how little things that are cultural, it gets seen as disrespect or being rude and things like that. So yeah, perfect segue.
Well, and it's scary. I've been that teacher before that had a problem with whether it be, earbuds or not. I'm like, oh my gosh, how many dumb things have I tripped over because I just didn't even know. It's horrible. And it's also at the same time, that's a really cool thing about being an educator is, better, you do better. Each time, better, you do better. You know better, you do better. And then you get to lean forward into it and say, okay, how are we going to help people get there faster? And so it's cool that you're pursuing your degree in this. I'm intimidated. Corey, that's amazing.
I don't know what I'm doing. It's definitely just like building the airplane as I'm going.
It's like the educational, metaphor for all of us.
Oh my goodness. So what are some of the major cultural differences that you see in education? This could be just like in the classroom, learning styles, like all of the above. And Kendall, maybe like with substituting or just what you've seen as like volunteering with school systems and stuff, like maybe you can chime in with some of that as well.
I mean, there's so many differences. When I taught in Richmond, I was the only white person in the room, and there were 2 white people on staff. And I learned a lot about how students, just getting to know them, the power in getting to know your students. And communication is, and all behavior is communication. So anytime I felt myself pausing, it was like, well, what am I, wait a minute, time for reflection. What am I really supposed to be getting out of this? And am I modeling for my kids what I need to see? And so I realized it was about getting to know the students before I could even see what the differences were and to see what the cultural things were. I wasn't bringing the culture. I was coming into a culture, and I needed to kind of shut up and learn about it because I am not the culture. And it's a hard pill to swallow, Corey. I can get very stuck on myself. And so that's a really big one. And for me, language too, like when I taught on the Front Range, knowing, okay, we had a lot of Hispanic families, and you're bilingual, and some people in your family are, and some people in your family aren't. And knowing that you're sitting in my classroom and you're having to translate as I'm teaching you in live time, it may take you 5 seconds longer to answer, but you are doing at least twice of the workload mentally.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right? Like, I'm tired after reading captions.
Yeah. Oh goodness, yeah.
Right, and so just being aware of that and thinking about how we're showing up with each other. And culture is a cool thing. It's not like this nasty, dirty word. And I think sometimes people can think, oh, there's a culture problem here. No, there's a culture. We just need to figure out what it is and see what we can celebrate in it.
I love that. Yeah.
So it's so interesting to me is like I'm steeped in education. It's been the only career I've ever had. And so I wonder, like, Kendall, you're coming into it. Corey, you didn't start in education, did you?
No, I'm a career switcher. So my background's like English, communications, journalism. And so I did like creative marketing for a bit before that. And then I've also worked like at a bank and some other things. But this is my favorite career thus far. And I don't plan on switching again.
You say that.
I know. Well, I'll switch roles. I would love to get into administration. But as far as like the field of education, like you would have to drag me out.
That's awesome. I think the culture is such a piece to that too, because when you have multiple cultures in one building, you get to set the tone as an administrator, I feel, and really is through the teachers that you and staff that you hire. How are you going to work with the different cultures? And have you set up an area where they're going to clash or where it's going to build on each other? And so sometimes it can be really little things like making sure everything is translated to the languages that are in your building. Like, that's just such a little small deal, but everyone should be able to read what you're putting out. And
I agree.
So it's right. Yeah. And so it's really interesting to see how we have all of these different cultures, and it's like, all right, how are we honoring that? And how are we curious about the professional development you're going to next week? So like, how are people getting trained on how to bring that into your classroom, into your school, into your building, and how to honor it and celebrate it without it being we celebrated it and now we're done with it thing?
Like a superficial, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
it was like February, so we're gonna do this stuff for Black History Month, but
exactly.
We paint all over it again. Yeah.
Right. We're only going to talk about, here are the 5 Black people we talk about every February. And it's absolutely. Like, come on, little guys.
Yeah. We've got to get deeper. We've got to get past surface level.
I think about the different buckets that there's so much to education and equity and group work that I wish maybe someone with like a true educator background can put this all into like cohesive sentences, but I just think of the buckets that I've learned over the years, specifically from teachers. And it was really helpful when I was in nonprofit community development, because power is one of the buckets, and you have to, it can be very hard for a white person, saying this as a white person, realizing, okay, there's the goal, and whatever the goal is, there are actually many ways to get there. And if you're used to being in charge and you're used to defining respect in a way that really just reflects your own culture, but other cultures show respect in other ways, then if you're trying to corral people and get people to work together towards this goal, if they don't show respect in the way that you're expecting, or they don't take the path that you're expecting, it is so easy to get knocked off course and just be focusing so much on the methods instead of the destination. So yeah, power. Kathryn and I have talked about this a lot. Are you willing to share power along the way to get to the goal? And I've really liked Kathryn's different examples over the years of ways that she's found to do that in classrooms. And I have found that the times I've regretted sharing power really came back to, I didn't define the parameters. And so then then there was no cohesive direction. But I don't know that I've ever regretted sharing power. And I think when Kathryn and I have talked about in work context, the different power struggles that people get in, at the end of the day, it always seems to be better to find out in the beginning how to share power, because everyone rejects being controlled, whether they're students or peers, like other adults. So no one is going to go down without a fight if you were trying to impose your will on them. And that's what I saw with this other teen program. It was a white facilitator, a white female facilitator, and a Black female student having a all-out power struggle that no one was going to come away from winning, and it was disrupting the whole program, right? And yeah, so can you find a way to share power? And it gives me a lot of feelings that I can't put into words.
I think that expressed it beautifully, because that's kind of what teachers are feeling right now, just like insert shriek here. But yes. I think it goes back to like just giving the power back to the teachers. Like, they see the raw data, they know the classroom better than like anyone else. Like, why can we not trust teachers to give us the information and the power to like solve these solutions, you know?
Well, but wait.
Oh, sorry, Kendall.
As the non-educator, let me go ahead and direct the conversation. But Corey, you are presupposing that the teacher does know the data and that they do know what's best for their classroom. Corey, have you not yet encountered a teacher that doesn't know the data and doesn't really know their classroom?
If you don't count like year one teachers, which I consider like ground zero, I would say that like 99%.
Like bless.
Yeah.
Just keep them in the room, keep them safe.
We need a warm body, like we'll switch out for breaks, but no, I would say virtually like all teachers know their students. Like, even if you don't, like, even to the teachers that like, oh, these kids give me so much trouble, like yada, yada, yada. Okay, so you still know their behavior patterns. You know what triggers them. You know that aha moment. You know all those things. But some of my biggest issues are like district folks coming in and like they'll see one thing and they're like, oh, well, you should have done this. Let me recommend this. Okay, you didn't get the full story, you know? So you came to that one moment, which could have been interpreted as so many other different things, but yet you're stripping the power from the teacher because of that one moment that you misinterpreted, you know?
It's so frustrating when you're in that teacher role and the people come in and you're like, why couldn't you have been here 10 minutes ago? This is very different.
A Friday at 3:00, like that's just mean at that point.
is. And I think too, like when I'm afraid to give away power, it's because there's this dissonance between my understanding of what I need the students to learn and do, the learner, and this perception of power that I get. And when I don't understand exactly what I need the student to demonstrate with proficiency or output or task or whatever the output is, the more confused I am about what that is, the more I restrict and hold that power. And I like keep it for myself and I get greedy with it. Mm-hmm. And that's gross and that's ugly. It's also real. And so the more we can give away that power and trust to the students, the more they'll pick it up and carry it. But boy, is that a scary thing to do. And you have to know when each student is ready to do it, because it's not all at the same time. Wouldn't that be nice? But it's not. I mean, Corey, you know that. It's not a thing that you can say, okay, everybody's ready now at the same time.
Oh, no. It's definitely like.
It's like driving clutch.
It really is. And I was actually reading another article, again, just looking at the school to prison pipeline and the roles of like African-American boys, brown boys, Hispanic boys. Giving them those leadership roles has greatly reduced like behavior issues in the classroom. So that's one of the biggest things that I have done. Like, hey, when I'm out or if I have to step out the room, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of this. And things go smoothly. Like the way that the classroom, and this was actually some feedback on a recent observation I got, is that how like asynchronously that like I just basically facilitate the classroom and the kids are so independent. They're just like, how do you do it? And I'm like, give them the power. Like it's our classroom. Like whatever they need to do, tell me. Like whatever I need them to do, they do it. Like,
when did you learn to do that, Corey? What made you think to try that? How long have you been doing that?
Well, honestly, just working with teenagers, primarily kids who are like already over my head. I'm like, okay, you're not but an adult. So, and you're much bigger than me. So, you want to be an adult, you want to be treated like an adult, let's practice.
Show me.
Yeah, show me. Like these are life skills. Like, yes, I could teach you all about verbs and parts of speech and complex sentences, but I've got to teach you life skills too. So show me how you would react in this situation. If there's a crisis and an adult has to step out the room, how would you react? Things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so what teaching is, because you do need to know a complex sentence and there are different reasons why we write. So I need you to show me how you show up in each of those times.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just love that you're doing that, Corey. It's so hard to get teachers there. And I wonder if it's part of our traditional teacher training. Like, I don't have a bone to pick with it. I don't work for a university. I just wonder, how do we get to that sooner?
Yeah. And like, I hear coworkers say like, oh, you trust your kids so much? Yeah, I do. They have not given me a reason. And like, if we do get to a situation where a kid gets rowdy or they don't know how to handle a situation, like we just discussed, we debrief, and then we give them their power back, you know?
Wait, you teach them?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Here's the crazy thing. They teach me too. Like, oh, they handle these situations really well. Like they don't do situations like this.
I have heard Kathryn. Oh, sorry, cut you off, Corey.
No, go for it.
Kathryn, I've heard you tell so many stories of, and weaponize is a strong word, but it's like you weaponize your vulnerability. You weaponize it in a good way. You empower your vulnerability. So Kathryn will, when she messes up in front of students and staff, she'll just say it like, oh, and I just really dropped the ball on that.
Whoops.
Oh yeah.
I guess it's just yeah. Have you, Kathryn, how have you seen that help your relationships with students? Like being honest about messing up and letting students correctly, like you let students correct you, Kathryn. And
I love that.
I hope they do.
Not a power battle. There you go.
You know, when I hear them.
Wait, Kathryn, shouldn't you be able to mispronounce a student's name the entire year or just give them a new one? Hard to say.
Let me just go in my office for a moment. You know, like what the heck? Let's show up as humans, shall we? And I really think figuring out how to set the culture where vulnerability is a norm and helping each other is a norm and making mistakes is a norm. The more you can build that culture of showing up as a human, the more it opens the floodgates for everything else. And there's a lot of power in that. And so whether it's a student, me saying, oh my, I get so disorganized, guys, I lose my spot. Can someone please help me write our agenda on the board? we're going in order. Y'all catch me if I'm going out of order, right, Corey? Like,
Yes.
I just need
Yes.
help. We all need help. And so teaching that and norming that is really powerful. And I don't think it can be understated. It's really also showing the kids you need them to
Yeah.
help you be your best self.
Yes. Yeah.
When I
even
started
those moments,
outsourcing, go ahead, Corey.
I was just saying those moments where it's like I could be going with a lesson in these like oh so perfect lesson plans that perfectly I can just be like, y'all, I don't know where I was going with that. Let's just retract for a minute. Oh yeah.
Our teen program, I started writing the end of day procedure. Like we were using a different organization space. And so there was a lot of particular cleanup, and that my brain's not good at that. And it was amazing to learn that I could just be honest with the teens and say, I'm going to forget this if it isn't written down. And if I forget it, we're going to get in trouble and not be able to meet here. And so I would write up the end of the day procedure on the board and ask them to remind me when we had forgotten something. And it was amazing the response the teens had to that. And then, like y'all are saying with your examples, like you learn you can give them more and more to play with. Like then it was someone else's responsibility to write up the procedure on the wall, and then they would come up with ideas like, well, can't we do more to clean up, or can't we do more to make ordering lunch efficient? There was a day that we couldn't get lunch ordered because Chick-fil-A would not deliver French fries. It was a whole thing. And so we had a thing planned for that hour, but we wanted them to enjoy lunch and power sharing, and we couldn't figure out lunch. And I don't know, we didn't want them to be disappointed by not having Chick-fil-A. So we were like, here's the parameters, here's the problem. They won't deliver with fries. And so we changed the plans, and like this group of 30 teens, they figured out what to do for lunch instead. And they asked all these questions about like, well, would they let us pick up the fries? Or they came up with so many different ideas. And then in the end, we couldn't do Chick-fil-A at all. But because we had gone through it all with them, we did not have to explain why they didn't have Chick-fil-A so they wouldn't be disappointed. Like they knew they had tried everything, and then they were happy with their subs because it wasn't plan A, but they got to create plan B.
Wait, so giving them a voice and giving them a reason why was an effective way of communicating with teenagers?
You know, crazy, so crazy. And it's interesting because it was a leadership program. And so whatever our plan had been, them having to figure out the solution to a problem using parameters. Oh, wow. Is that leadership?
And they're good at it. Like they amaze me daily with their problem solving skills. Like I'm like, I never would have thought of that.
Yes.
I agree. I agree. And one of my favorite, not favorite, I mean, okay, fine, we all have favorites, but one of my favorite administrators, she just would come up to us to say, as teachers, like, what do you need from me right now? And I would always think like, I need a professional. Actually, no, I need to leave 15 minutes early because I need to get my oil changed. Right. And so now I've realized when kids are having a hard time and we're just having like a really big come apart, what do you need from me? And I'm elementary, and some kids need to sit in your lap and have just a cry for a minute. And other kids just need to hit the freaking wall for a minute. And I'm like, all right, let's throw a glove or hit a pillow. We have choices. You know, it's like turns out that asking humans also what they need bottom of Maslow's triangle here, need is really powerful.
I'm curious. So my role post-pandemic, like first year, them being fully back, has been 60% teacher, 40% therapist. And this is like at secondary level. Like, honestly, like, again, what do you need from me today? A lot of them need just like that therapy hat. Is it similar in elementary? I mean, it's probably not complex, but like,
I would say it's about 90% therapy. 10%.
Oh, gosh.
Well, some of these kids, and I guess I'm speaking as a mom too, some of these kids all of a sudden have this extreme interruption in their social development. Just this bracket where maybe your grown-ups at home were at home more than what they were before, or now you're at home with them, or now your grown-ups are having to go work and it's not safe for you to be around them when they come home, so you're at somebody else's house for a longer amount of time. it's the kids are confused, and thankfully kids are resilient, and so they can figure it out, and they're really brave in asking the hard questions, whereas adults get a little bit freaked out about them.
Yeah.
But a lot of therapy and then some teaching.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's like, where are we at today? And honestly, like that influences what we do today. If I can read the room and see that, like, okay, mentally we're not here today. Do we need just like 15-minute moment, like a brain break? Do we need to just take today as like, hey, we're just checking out today, we'll catch up tomorrow?
Right.
I think it's crucial in the classroom as well.
It's really powerful.
And that's some of the stuff that has helped me so much in understanding myself and other adults and working with myself and other adults. The stuff with kids is so on the surface. Like Kathryn has taught in a lot of really high poverty, high trauma school districts. And so she'll say, like, you know, she knows the kids in her class that had to walk a mile to school in the snow with a jacket, not a coat. And so when she says, like, what do you need right now to a kid, she might know that he had to get
a nap.
Yeah, exactly. Because his house is in a place where he can get a lot of sleep. And, you know, thinking of that with adults, learning about conflict resolution, you know, so much of conflict might just be that you aren't talking about the same needs. And there's so much that you don't actually need to fight about because, oh, there's just a need that's not being met. And the way both of you adjust to your classes, to the needs that are in front of you, I think if everyone could have learned, could have experienced that as kids, or seen how well that works with students, if we could try that in workplaces, that would be amazing, because we're not machines and there are days where we just need to adjust what's expected of us a little bit.
I agree. And I don't see why adults are so embarrassed. Like those bottom Maslow's needs, like, hey, I'm tired today. I'm hungry. Like, I didn't like food. Like, that's what's wrong with me today. Because my kids have no issue saying, I'm hungry. I'm tired. Like, I just need to go for a bit. And I'm like, okay, thank you for letting me know. This is the game plan. Let's work together and make it happen, you know?
I really wish adults would just be like, I'm tired, instead of being grumpy at each other.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, probably me too. So, like, let's just take a nap and forget this.
Well, and like, I feel like that's one of my jobs as an administrator, is to show up as human. I mean, you know, every day is fine. And then some days are just harder. And one of the days that I had to lead these really intense data meetings, I just said, look, guys, physically, I feel lousy. I took a COVID test. I'm negative. I'm vaccinated, all things. I'm feeling at like 40% right now. And one of the teachers said, do you want me to turn off the backlights? Yeah, I do. Like, thank you so much. And I got tripped up on my words, and I just kind of had these like longer than normal processing times, and they were so gracious. And I think they need to see that coming from everywhere in a school building, because they have to get to engage with that as adults, teachers do, and staff do, before they can really engage with it in kids, because you have to feel what it feels like. And I think too, and tell me if I'm going off here, Corey, I'll get back in my lane. I think it's really amazing when I've worked with these students who have walked a mile in the snow with a jacket, and they're, you know, 3 sisters, and one of them has tape on their shoes, and they get to school on time, have breakfast, and then theoretically be ready to learn. And then going somewhere else in the same town and then saying, oh, well, you know, so-and-so is not ready to learn because they, you know, it's just hard for them. And I can see that their trusted adult drove them to school. They have access to, you know, they have everything that like middle class provides. And yet, oh no, they're not ready to learn. I'm sitting here thinking, really? Because these other kids 10 miles away are complete badasses in showing up like this. And some of them are still translating at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's scary, because it's almost like, oh, you're Title I. All of a sudden we've lowered the bar for what your success can look like. I'm like, no. These kids are doing so much more, and so much more
before 7 a.m.
Before 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Like, I could not imagine getting my siblings together, fixing them breakfast, getting myself prepared, like trying to figure out what the rest of the day is going to look like all before 7 a.m. Like, it's not going to happen.
Get your uniform on, get your library books, remember your specials for the day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then to learn that some of those students, especially if they're not white, they get dinged for being disrespectful when it's just a cultural difference. Kathryn taught me this amazing word called add-ins. When the person with the mic is talking and other people and people in the group are talking too, sometimes they're not being rude and interrupting. Sometimes what they're doing is an add-in to let you know that they really like what you're saying, or they agree, or they're with you. And tragically, for a lot of us white folks, we were raised that the way that you are polite in an audience is to be as quiet and still as possible. And so we can perceive it as rudeness if students of color are making noise when we talk. And what the noise might actually mean is, yes, we love it. We're with you. Keep going. And how tragic then to be like, stop being disrespectful.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kendall. Didn't we have that conversation? I think about like something with church, how like in traditional Black churches, call and response, and then
yes,
like, white churches, like,
yes,
like, yell out.
Yes. So I don't know what the word is for it at church, but same thing. I was in a mixed race preaching class, and everyone had to write a sermon and preach it to the group. And a Black man was preaching his sermon, and he stopped pretty quick into his sermon and said, y'all, he was like on the edge of torn up by the white people in the room, because he didn't think we were with him. Like, he thought we were in eyes open comas. And he was like, y'all have to give me something. And we were like, what are you talking about? And he was like, are you here? Are you listening? Like, why aren't you interacting with me? We ended up having to pause the class to figure out together in real time that white people and Black people do church differently. And for Black people, the way that you participate in preaching as a worship experience is add-ins. And for white people, we show that we are being respectful by being quiet and still. And by doing that, we were literal energy zombies. We were draining his energy by not participating back at him. And extrapolating what's under the surface there, I think this is why it can be incredibly lonely to be a white person, because we are taught that everything is on your shoulders and your bootstraps. And like preaching, it is your job to come up with a good sermon and make sure you do a good job delivering it, versus the Black experience of it's the preacher's job to show up with a sermon, but it's everyone who's listening's job to amplify, magnify, and throw it back and build it together.
Yes.
And but the white experience is no, be quiet and do it by yourself, and we'll be quiet as we listen. And you won't even know if we're listening or with you.
Yeah, I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, look, this is our classroom. I'm not going to talk to myself. Like, I need response. I need you to engage. I need you to say, you're not making any sense. I love this lesson. Can we speed this up?
Are you with me?
Yes. Are you with me? Yes.
You wouldn't rather just know when they all have F's on their tests in 3 weeks that they weren't with you? Wouldn't that just be a better way?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Or just to stand up there for an hour and lecture, just talk to myself? Absolutely not.
I think it's an option to get the in the moment feedback, and that you don't have to perceive it as rude.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I had such a hard time when we moved. I've led a lot of professional development. On the Front Range, there is definitely more balanced with white and teachers of color. And I love it when I'm in a training or whatever, and I'm, hearing some snapping or I'm getting some sound, and I really appreciate it. And I came here and I'm literally in our first PD and it is silent, and I stopped because I was like, I'm sorry, am I using words for just not like jiving? What? I feel like I've lost you and I'm on minute 5. I need some feedback here. And I'm like, oh no, we're with you. I was like, then let's just start with a quiet thing like a thumbs up or maybe a smile.
Yeah.
I need some feedback.
Yes, please. Like, ugh.
Yeah. It's a difference though. I've received office referrals for things that I'm like, wait a minute, was that?
Yeah.
Obviously the teacher or the staff took it as disrespect, but if we're looking at intention, is that the intention of what the child meant? Some things are pretty clear, like punching. Okay, fine, that's where we are. We're gonna have to deal with that. But snapping or tisking, it's like, okay, well, wait just a minute. Were they trying to derail your lesson? Or were they either needing help and needing you to go back, getting attention because they're totally lost? Or were they cheering you on? Like, what is at the root of that behavior? Because behavior is communication. So when you're writing a kid up for a form of communication, it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's just pause and take a minute and think about what it was and what it's communicating, because chances are it's someone seeking connection. And they're going to get it. Let's maybe reframe it as a positive or learning about each other instead of just assuming that it's disrespect.
Yeah, I completely agree. And nonverbal cues are so important. Like I can look and see if I just see blank faces, I'm like, I've missed y'all somewhere. And they're like, yeah, like you're gonna have to go back over that again. I'm like,
just back up.
Like you said, it's a form of communication. Like everything doesn't have to be verbalized. Like I didn't get that. Like that's again relationship building, knowing your kids. Like I know that if the kid that's always responding is now looking at me super puzzled, like I've dropped the ball somewhere. Like
oh crap.
Oh, yeah.
You're my weather vane and you're still, that's not good.
Yes.
And I think here's my theory. Tell me if you agree or disagree. The teen slang moves so fast, and I feel like trying to keep up with it is just sad for all of us.
Cap, I understand it.
Really?
Gen Z, like 90% of my life resolves around Gen Z. So
one of the
girls, I do elementary.
So the reason I'm bringing it up is because one of the teens I knew, she dabbed back when that was a thing, where you bend one arm and you put the other arm way up in the air.
We know what it is. Sorry, Kendall. I just had to roast you.
Her substitute teacher did not know what it was and sent her to the office for making gang signs.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, she was a young Black girl. So, I mean, gang signs are a thing, sure. And, Pepe the Frog, the cartoon internet meme, did get co-opted by white supremacy. So, like, one of my teacher friends had to do some intensive interventions with young boys who were using Pepe the Frog to wink at white supremacy and Nazism. And had she not known that, she would have missed something big. But then on the other hand, this girl was dabbing and it wasn't related to gang signs. It was just a teen dance move. And she got sent to the principals for it. So what does a teacher do when you can't keep up with everything that every symbol and word that the young people might be using? I would just think maybe relationships, but I don't know.
That and just like research, like be that old person. Like, what does that mean? Like, what are you doing?
I mean, and so many times when I ask a kid, like, what was that?
Yeah.
Like, well, it's not so well. I can't. And that's my cue to Google it on my phone, not on my work computer.
Yeah.
And figure. To take a minute on my phone. And then other times kids will be like, oh, it's a dance thing. And then if they get up and do it again readily and like, oh, look at my friends doing it. We have to, kids, they know what those boundaries are. They know what those norms are. Mm. And so ask them. Turns out a lot of them know. And sometimes they won't know and they need help getting there, but that's like a handful of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like pretty clear, two clearly different responses, the sheepishness versus the, it just means this is the new dance move.
Yeah. Like Kathryn said, like they know when, okay, maybe that wasn't school behavior, because I'm constantly in mind, like, is this weekend behavior? Is this like classroom behavior?
Yes!
Yeah.
Can we talk about code switching and how do you all approach that? And do you teach it or refer to it implicitly or explicitly with students or with other teachers? Go.
You want to go first, Corey?
I will. So I always tell my kids, if anyone is in the room who looks older than me, is dressed fancier than me, if they have a clipboard, if you do not recognize them, we don't use
AKA district.
Yes, or the state, or like an administrator. We don't use the language, but if we're just vibing in the classroom communicating, as long as it's PG-13, I'll allow it.
I love the clipboard because that's so true.
Yes, I was like, if they're wearing heels, if they have a tie on, if they have a name tag, like
Lock it up. Lock
And
it
it
up.
works. It works. I actually had stepped out to use the restroom again because I trust my kids, and district had popped in, and they were just like silent. And I was like, thank you all. And in the feedback, they were like, we had no issue with you like stepping out because the kids were under control. So again, just boundaries, rules, and like, yeah.
Yeah, I think I have kind of two hats I wear on that. When I was a teacher, then I would say, how you speak in this room is how we learn about each other. And so if you're changing your language or the way you communicate with a grown-up when you're in this room, and if you're doing it out of respect for me, I need to kind of understand why. Is it because you're afraid you're going to offend me? Is it because you don't trust me? Is it because you're not sure I'll understand? Is it because this is what they told you at home, that when you talk to white people, like this is what it should sound like? Like, I need to understand. And some of the kids would be like, yeah, like my mom told me, I need to talk with a different voice when I'm with white people, especially white people at school. That is hurtful. And it's also like, oh, crap, this is what we've trained school to be? Crap. There's so much we're shutting out the door with our sense of self. This is how we're training kids to show up in a learning environment. At that point, it's not a learning environment. That's a performative environment. And don't get me wrong, I want you to perform, but
But be yourself while you're performing. Like, I don't want you to fit this cookie cutter model. Like, show the district how you do it, student A style. Like, I don't want to see you replicate, I don't know, some like structure that I've done it, put your own flair to it.
Right. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I ended up having a little girl, and she was dyslexic, and life was just really freaking hard for her. And she's bilingual. And I'm like, woo, how a dyslexic brain does both. Like, bless. Like, I have no idea. And she ended up just saying, I said, what do you like? What makes you happy? And she said, dancing. And I was like, what kind of dancing? Tell me more. And a few weeks later, she ended up coming to the school and bringing her beautiful dancing dress. I forget what it's called, but it's handed down through generations. It's like a Hispanic tradition. She brought her partner, and the grandmother cooked so much delicious food, shoved it in my mouth. And we ended up, they did a dance in our parking lot because there was space for all the twirling and all of the cool things to see. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this didn't happen until the spring. What would have happened if I had asked her in August, hey, what makes you happy?
Yeah.
Crap.
That was on one of the handouts from Educating Children of Color, was where can you integrate what they're into? Like, whatever, if you need to teach about fractions or you need to teach about quotation marks, like figure out what the kids like first and then use that to help them learn about the fractions and quotes. Sorry, Corey, cut you off.
No, I'm just going to build on that point. So that's why I asked these kids, so what's the plan? What's the goal after high school? Let's not just think about, oh, this unit on theme and plot. Like, what's our life goal? Because yeah, writing a sentence or run-on sentences aren't going to be, you're not going to get tested on that when you're an adult. But if you're going to be reading contracts, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you got to write contracts, complete sentences are important. So this is why we need to understand these skills and things like that. So yes, I think lifelong goals are crucial when it comes to like teaching content.
Well, and I have to think too, I think exposure in elementary, I feel so much like exposure is so much where we build that kind of foundation of understanding and what that exposure means. So we're new to the Western Slope. A lot of these kids have been skiing and snowboarding and extreme winter sportsing literally since they could walk.
Love it.
And then here we come and we're like, hi, we're on greens. No, actually, we're on the magic carpet. Go back to the beginning. And I'm like, oh my gosh, even, just thinking about what we can learn and what exposure we have. And so then I think too, in elementary, so if you're not sure if you want to be a contract writer in the future, or if your job is going to include some element of that, how am I exposing you to those concepts and giving you opportunities to try out different things in elementary school? So then when you get to middle and high, you can say, oh, I know about these 80 careers, and I know I really narrowed it down to 50.
Yeah. And like, these are the ones I really like to do. I enjoy working with others, but I may not be tech savvy. So these are the like choices I have for my career and stuff. Like, I love it. It's great.
What's the hardest part? Because that sounds scary to me. When they get taller than me, I'm kind of like, long out.
They're giant babies, so that's the thing. Like they're just like giant elementary school kids and like these 6'2", 200-pound bodies. Like, it's miraculous. I'm just like, there are still days it's like, you're not being yourself. Like, what's wrong? Do you need a hug? And they're like, yes. And like,
Oh,
yeah. And I'm
Give
like,
you a hug.
yeah. Or hey, like I know what you're planning, Block. Can I just like sit in here for 5 minutes? And granted, like they have the whole classroom to sit, but they choose to sit 3 inches from me. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. So
Corey, I want to brag on you. There was a huge fight at Corey's school a few months ago. And my boyfriend's a cop, and so he was, I think he might have been one of the first ones on there. And when he saw what was going on, he was like, yeah, we need everyone here. We need all the cops. Let's send all the cops. My boyfriend's pretty chill. So if he says that, stuff's probably hit the fan.
yeah.
And I remember texting Corey and like, I didn't text you in the moment. At the end of the day, I was like, oh yeah, there was a big deal at Corey's school today. I should check in. And you were like, oh no, that was fine. Like some kids came to my room to hang out while it was going on. And I was just like, okay.
Yes!
Like,
It's like the sanctuary. Like they come in here
Yeah.
and like they know it's open door policy. So like literally
Yes.
yeah. So I love it. Again, that's where one of those therapy sessions come in.
can I brag on you, Kathryn, and tell a slightly personal story about you?
Let's see. No,
Okay.
yeah, go for it.
That horrible time in your life where the kids had to get your coffee for you because you
Yep.
couldn't do it. When
Yep.
Kathryn was undergoing cancer treatment, she every day was it a different kid? Did they earn the right, or was it they had it for a week? But anyway, she wouldn't go to the staff room to get her coffee. Students would go, and this is elementary school, and they all knew how she liked her coffee. And they would go to the staff room to get her coffee. And I just thought, I remember how special it felt for the teacher to ask you to do anything when you're that little. And oh my gosh, they got to leave the classroom holding one of the teacher's possessions. They had to go into the teacher only room and prepare a beverage and bring it. Like the amount of trust and authority and then expertise, because I know Kathryn has a specific way she likes her coffee, and I know that she believes in students, and so she wouldn't have pulled back on how exactly she wanted her coffee. So like, wow, that must have been very meaningful for those students to get your coffee.
I trust my students who have run in my classroom more than I trust like 60% of my like coworkers. Like they know, actually it's probably higher than that. It's probably close to like 80%. Like they know the routine, like they know where things go, they know how to pass out papers, attendance, like they're my substitutes. If I'm out,
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Yeah, I can even send them to sub for someone else because I know you know how to do it in here.
Yes, like check on them every 20 minutes or so, they will be fine. Like
I'm even gonna give you my timers. Like I need you to go.
and they ask, like, do we have to have a substitute? I'm like, legally, yes. Like, we're
That pesky law.
yeah, I prefer you didn't, but c'est la vie, you know?
Well, and like, you know what's so crazy is that year I was really sick. I was doing cancer treatments. I had radiation. I didn't have the energy to stand. I brought in a rocking chair, sat in a rocking chair a lot. It was also one of the biggest classes I had had. And I'm not going to say I was cranky, but I was definitely cranky. And I needed the students to do like more without me. I also had my highest scores that year. And it's not all about scores, but it makes me wonder, like, what kind of agency did I foster and build up in them and trust was I forced to have in them, but then made them show up for themselves in this other way. And I never had a year with scores that high. Mine were decent, but never that high. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Dang.
Independence is key. Like, and again, that's a major life skill. Like teaching them autonomy is like more than any other standards that like Virginia has to offer or any test.
Right. And when I mean ask 3 before me, and I really mean like 5 and find the answer, get a Chromebook, figure.
That's my favorite thing though, because usually they'll ask and one of their classmates will say, he'll just said that, like, this is the answer. And I'm like,
I love it when you don't even have to provide your own clap back.
I'm like, this is what we're doing. Like, run with it.
I know. And usually I just say, that's what he said. Like, yep.
See, I have to be careful. That's what he said, or that's what she said, because teenagers,
I know. And usually I'll say he got it, because in my brain I'm like, Kathryn, that's not professional.
So we've kind of dipped into like the last three questions, but there are a couple more I kind of want to just like elaborate a little bit on. So what's your experience with Title I education, and where do you see the biggest areas of inequity?
So I've spent 6-7 years in title, and then a few years not in title, and not in title now. I'm gonna be honest with you, Corey, I miss it. There's a different grit. Yep, there's a different grit. There's a different attitude and framework of, well, we're gonna do it because we have to do it. And I love that commitment to figuring out the answer. And I feel like a lot of that just naturally comes out of Title I, because you get your Title I status through family income and figuring out over time. And so you have to reach this threshold of financial poverty. I'm saying financial poverty on purpose because they are some of the richest families. Anyway.
Yeah.
Financial poverty to get that status. And there's a lot of grit, whether you're with your parents at night when they're cleaning the school. We have that a lot. Yeah. These kids figuring out where to do homework or where to find food. Like the sense of agency is so incredible in Title I. And I think that's a huge misunderstanding. People think, oh, these poor kids, oh, they need so much help. No, they don't need you to whatever that is at them, on them. Yeah. No, thank you. Instead, just be like, oh, I see you, and let's get where we need to go.
Yeah.
And I think too, I mean, the savior complex comes in really hard, especially when teachers come in and are like so well-intentioned of, I'm going to get this class where they need to be. I'm going to do this for them, and I'm going to give them something they've never had. Ooh, really? Yes. It's probably not going to work that way. And if you let them, they'll probably actually teach you a whole lot about being a human that will make your life better. And I think academically, it's incredible to see how kids in Title I feel like they have almost this broader view of taking all of the different gears, and they have to see how to put them together before you can teach them to make the gears turn.
Yeah.
Whereas the traditional teaching model, it's like, here's this gear, it's going to turn. Here's this gear, and it's going to turn. Yeah. I feel like in Title I, it's a very different thing because they have a broader scape of reality, or their reality is different. And
that, or their gears are a little rusty, so they've got to clean them up first.
Right.
Oh, this spoke is broken, so we've got to repair this spoke, and then I've got to teach you how it. Yeah.
Right, but they're there.
Yeah, they are. They're very resilient. Like, oh my gosh, these kids are sometimes my heroes. I'm like, I don't know how you figured that out so quickly and still have like a positive outlook with it, but you did it.
Right. I mean, we went virtual, and I could see a couple kids, they had brick behind them, and I'm like, oh, where are they? They have brick inside their house. No, they're sitting outside the school building because this is where Wi-Fi is.
Yeah.
They brought their school device and it's hooked online. Like, respect, nothing but respect for that, because that is a grind. Like, that is.
I love that. Oh man.
I was like, I'm not gonna cry. They're like,
I know. I'm the same way right now. Because they look at me like, why are you crying? I'm like, because y'all are my heroes. Like, y'all get it. They react so much better than most adults. Like, oh man.
I know. And I tell kids all the time, like, man, I look up to you. Like, that's incredible. I get tired, and I know you get tired, and yet here you are. Like,
yeah.
Dang, I look up to you. That is cool that you're doing that.
Yeah.
In this title.
I wouldn't want to go anywhere else though. Like you said, like keep me in Title I, keep me like right here, like no prep school, no like magnet school, like no, right here, Title I. Like don't move me.
Like I've almost had to grieve that, Corey. That sounds so crazy, but like I've had to grieve what it means to not be in a title school.
Yeah.
What I realized is even though the financial makeup looks a little different, there are still all those zones there. But they're hidden. There are more doors dropped that you have to unlock before you get there, because white middle class culture really locks those down.
Yeah.
And it's a different set of tools that I just have to adjust.
I agree. And then I'm also at a turnaround school, so we're fighting for accreditation too. So we've kind of got like
oh, I shouldn't look so excited when you say turnaround. I'm sorry.
No, it's a process, but like once we come out on top, like So when I tell people like my kids are grinding, like they are grinding, like they are fighting like battles.
So, Corey, do you want to explain what a turnaround school is? Because I just realized Kendall may not know what that is.
Oh yeah, sure. So a turnaround school, it's either a school that has like accreditations with what's the term, Kathryn? Modification, is that it?
Yeah. It's different in Virginia versus Colorado what the terminology is, but for us, you've really reached you're not performing, you're not within compliance, you're almost not doing enough to stay open.
Yeah.
It's the last stop before they close your school.
Okay.
And so you can be either like state monitored or like when you're in the red, you can become like state controlled, where the state of Virginia comes in and like they take over.
Oh, so you're seeing probably a lot of people with clipboards, Corey?
Yes, like
Okay.
at this point. Yeah. Yeah.
Burn.
So
Okay.
at that level, we're the official term is like state monitored. So we're like at the last stage before like they come in and like take over. And so like with a state controlled school, like they can do like whatever they want. Like their teacher have told stories of like them closing schools, making them charter schools, like doing a clean sweep, and just like they can do whatever they want.
Whatever they want.
Yeah. So we're hoping that we don't get there. We've made some progress this year, so I'm hoping that we continue on this path. But yeah, it's been a wild year.
So, like, Corey, this is where I get tripped up too, because something Title I really taught me is compliant and proficiency are two very different things.
Yes.
So you can be like, you can be quiet and on task. It doesn't mean you know jack spot.
Exactly. Yes. Or so what that you got a 357 on the score and you wanted a 375? Like, hey, they know the content. They passed every one of my tests. Like, so many other factors could have gone into that day. Like, you didn't let them have their headphones. Right. They were better with headphones. Like, they were hungry. Yeah.
Right. You made them take their hat off.
Oh my gosh. That is like
Are you saying that's not a hill that a teacher should die on? That's not a power struggle to what?
Sometimes I wear a hat through the whole school day. Did you know that? I'm an administrator and I wear a hat sometimes.
Ooh.
Yeah, guess what? You should be comfortable in your body when you're at school.
Me and my kids sometimes will like have this like hidden language where like most of the time they'll take it off from me if I like ask. Yep. So like one of the like mean teachers will ask them to do it and they'll refuse to do it, and then they'll see me and like immediately do it. And teacher's like, how do you get them to do it? I'm like, I treat them like the person they want to be treated. Yeah, with respect. Like,
there's got to be something to relationships and not expecting 100% compliance all the time that makes it like, this is a chip I will use occasionally and then it works.
Or things to be compliant with, like you're going to wear a hat for the rest of your life. Like, so what? Like, yeah, you're in a school building wearing a hat. What life skill is that teaching you? Like,
right. Well, and then I wonder too, sometimes I'm like, is this really about me? Because we have some kids who they had a rough morning, had a whatever. The hat is like kind of an F you. Like, leave me alone right now. And if I take that off, then I'm just asking you to explode. I took your coping mechanism away. I took away your external signal that internally things aren't going well. I just took that away. That is not okay.
And again,
so it's like thinking about it, knowing your kids.
Yeah. And like, again, with like Title I kids in like low poverty situations, like that could be their only possession and you're stripping it just for like compliance. Like, absolutely not. Like, if you're going to get all your work done and you're going to have your hood on, you need to have your earbuds in, like, go with it. Do what you need to do.
Sounds good. Is it proficient? Are you going to apply the feedback I gave you? Great. Cool. Yeah. Put those earbuds back in.
I think something y'all are both good at is what is the underlying principle that matters? And is that being respected, regardless of what the appearance looks like?
Yeah. What's your why? Like, why are you doing it?
Yeah. Are they wearing this hat to be personally disrespectful to me, to the school, to the country? Probably not. They might just need a little bit of a force field today.
Yeah. And 80% of the time it's, I need a haircut. Mom doesn't get paid for another 3 weeks. I look like crap. I don't want to be the target of bullying. So like, I'm going to put my hood on.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right. And I had a lot of girls and they'd say, oh, my mom started my hair last night. And then they got late and went to bed. And so they'd be like half done. I'm like,
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to check your cubby and see if you have another hat you want to switch it out? Like,
Hey, you a bonnet, a wrap, whatever. Like, get your work
right. Like,
here.
you
Like,
don't need to feel naked right now. Like, that is just not ever a way I want you to feel. And so let's figure out what it's going to look like in this space.
my favorite part is when they're like, Mr. Williams, you need a haircut. I'm like, okay, we're not going to play this game.
Oh, I'm always like, you're right. My roots are showing. That's right. I know. So if I have a sub next week, you'll know why.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use one of my teacher techniques. Kendall, can you help me with the final question? We were talking about like the under and misdiagnosis of Black and brown boys. Was that with ADHD? Was that mental illness? Could you help Mr. Williams in what I meant by that?
I love how you're sharing power and expressing vulnerability and testing my recall on our conversation 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I think we were saying is the typical elementary school classroom not designed for typical boys. And so what we want to label as disrespect might just be that they need more recess breaks. And Kathryn, I remember that year that you were in treatment and in the rocking chair a lot, you had your kids do like jumping jacks and push-ups in between activities. And I bet that's part of why. Yeah. You were physically keeping them tired, but like you were helping them get their energy out. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what the stats are, but what I've heard in different places is that how is it happening that Black and brown boys, they're being like too diagnosed with one thing and not diagnosed enough with the other thing. So whatever it is, whatever they need is being missed. And I don't know why that is, but I wonder with boys in particular, if the design of most elementary schools is just not conducive to little boys. And so, or because girls are more likely to be socialized to be compliant, they stay in their seats. And so they don't get diagnosed with ADHD because they're not as likely to be disruptive. I don't know. So what's going on with all of that? Is it gender? Is it race? Is it what?
Me and my stink face because it's all of it.
Yeah.
It's all of it. And like I was diagnosed with ADD when I was in high school, but I was quiet and I was compliant and I could do enough. I got by with it. And then I wonder, inversely, like, who got the diagnosis that should have been mine? Like, who were they looking at? Who were they studying? And for what cause? Is it because they were rowdy? Is it because the student naturally has a higher verve and energy where they need to move? Is it, what set of criteria are we setting up as our red alert to say, hey, this kid needs help? And I think in schools where it's so powerful for kids to have teachers that look like them and staff, it's so, so powerful. And so that's a huge thing right there to just say, hey, my teacher doesn't get how I am. They don't get my culture. They don't get how my body needs to move. They don't get that. And so thinking about how we also need kids to be kids. So when you're 8 years old, I should only be teaching you in 8 to 10 minute chunks instead of this long sit and get thing. And so if at the end of that 8 minutes, you're kind of losing it and you're tapping or you're, moving around, that's not a kid fail. That's a kid being a kid.
Yes.
An adult fail.
Yeah.
And then it's so hard because then when kids even get out of their, that's fairly benign, but when kids get out of their seat and start moving, I think teachers, and I'll say this for me sometimes, I feel threatened all of a sudden, like, why are you out of your seat? That's not what you're supposed to do right now. What are you doing? And in those moments, if I didn't build in appropriate timing and pacing, if I didn't add in movement breaks, and if I didn't really share purpose or power, then that's when I felt the most threatened. And so it's like catching it in the moment, being like, well, wait. And I would tell them, ooh, y'all, this isn't this long problem. I need to recalibrate for a minute. We're all gonna have to go shake it out for a minute.
Yeah.
And it's I can be on the soapbox for a while. It really sucks. And it's especially Black boys, I think people get threatened. And there was embarrassing story on myself. I was sitting on the gym floor working with a child on the spectrum, and we were sitting there because it was quiet and we were practicing handling the echoey sound in the gym. And then all of a sudden, these Black boys come in. They all come in, 10 or 15 Black boys who came in because they earned recess. no adult with them. And I automatically thought, you're not supposed to be here right now. Oh, gross, disgusting. Why? Why did that make me nervous? It's like, gosh, what have we had trained into us and what have we accepted without realizing it? Because if as a teacher, I'm responding with that, and I know these kids, I freaking taught half of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, where's this perception of threat coming from? Is it because it's unexpected? Is it because it's a bunch of humans at one time? Is it because I have some kind of racism within me that I'm like, oh no, this is a threat? What do I need to reflect on and change so that I don't respond that way? Because kids shouldn't be greeted with a stink face. Like, that is not everything that should happen.
Yeah.
And so it's
Or just question
hard.
what motives, because high school level, like the kids, they have like a digital hall pass. So like on their phone, like they just show it and whatever. But
I never heard of that.
Yeah, it's called e-hall pass. It works. It's brilliant. But these kids get stopped 3 to 4 times more asking, where are you going? Are you skipping? Why are you in the hallways? Versus their non-Black or white peers, and they get no interaction. It's just like they get to go on their way. So, man, yeah.
Ooh, it's like a mirror of society outside the school.
Yeah, yeah. And again, going back to the code switching thing, like I have to teach them, just be compliant, say, this is where I'm going, like, don't argue back, like, it's the motive, just explain your reasoning. And again, we shouldn't have to do that. Like,
Nope.
And they say, well, this classmate doesn't have to explain this, or this classmate doesn't get questioned. And I wish I had the answers, but yeah.
I think too, like, as a white teacher, I have to ask myself, what implicit things have I put on these kids that are saying you need to show up in a certain way? You need to explain what you're doing, or you need to do whatever, because that's not fair. And so, like, every class I've taught, I'm like, all right, we're gonna talk about implicit and explicit. And like, if you're picking up an implicit that I put down on you, anything I'm putting down on you isn't a thing that we should do, because this is the learning space. So if you feel like I'm putting something down on you, then that's already like not okay. And here's are the ways that you can pull me aside. Don't embarrass me in front of the class, because then I'm going to engage in a power struggle and we're both going to not win at that. So here are the ways to sidebar me.
Yeah. I find myself in those spaces too. My kids are quick to call me out, like, hey, you disciplined him this way, but she didn't get the same treatment. That's not fair. And I'm like, you're right. Yes, I wish you would have pulled me to the side and said something, but like, then again, like, I deserved it. Thank you for calling me out. Like, I would definitely make adjustments. And
Thank you for helping me do better.
Yeah, like, apologize to kids too. Like, why is that such a forbidden like task? Like, please normalize apologizing to kids. Like,
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I wonder too, like, what does an apology mean to you? Because sometimes I think people perceive an apology as handing out their power. And I'm like, this should be completely unattached to power. This is just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Recognizing your awakening on that thing and then backpedaling to include the person and let them know you're on the same picture together. Like, come on.
I had a student pull me. Anytime I like pull, I tell a kid like, "Hey, let's step outside." Like, they know it's a more serious conversation.
Yep.
I had a student raise their hand and say, "I need to talk to you outside." I was like, "I have definitely done something," and it was a conversation where like he felt like he was treated unfairly. That like I was more strict with him with policies and stuff. And the first 2 things I said was like, "Hey, I'm sorry," and like his whole demeanor just like changed. He was like, "That's it?" I was like, "Yes, why wouldn't I apologize to you?" He was like, "None of my other teachers apologized to me." Then I had to stop myself from crying again. I was like, "Look, dude, like, we'll make this." Oh my gosh. But it like changes your day. And again, that power dynamic, like, give kids these power, like, they're not going to abuse it. In fact,
I can see. Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
I can see adults abusing the power more than the kids. Like, they have no reason to do that.
But they do call you out, and they have embarrassed you in front of the group. And I can see why that is not a sell for anyone listening to start to open the floodgates for sharing power. You've gotten called out in front of the group and embarrassed. But see, going past that, you can leave your class unattended and you're not embarrassed in front of the state or administration. So
Exactly. And then I asked myself, am I embarrassed because he called me out, or am I embarrassed because of the action I did to this child? Like,
Amen.
good point. That's a really good point.
yeah. So,
Well, yeah. And then I always wonder too, like, I live stream it and being like, oh, guys, he called me out and that was embarrassing. I can feel my face is so red right now. My body's feeling a little shaky. And I'm just going to like, need a minute.
yeah.
And so then kids know, like, when you visually see someone turning red, they may feel shaky and need a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. The cues I look for is like putting their hood on, putting their head down. I was like, I hit a nerve. Let me chat with them. Like, but nothing a bag of Takis or like a snack or like whatever their snack of the week is to pick. So like
The amount of Takis I pick up from Sam's Club.
yes. Oh gosh. Like there should be a tax like credit just
Zip
for, like,
card.
yeah.
Just send it with the COVID test to your house.
Yes.
It's a bundle.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I'm interested. I can like feel, I just crossed my arms.
I know.
Well, I'm a boy mom. I'm a straight up boy mom. And I'm just wondering what schooling will look and feel like for them. One of them has a higher verve of movement. I'm like, all right, well, what are we going to hit? Like,
Yeah.
what's coming up next?
I know. It's
Boy,
like,
boy.
but again, different like learning styles. So as all the PD that we've taught, all the like teacher classes we've been taught. So some are visual, some are movement, some are mathematics, some are auditory. Like just adjust with the kids. Like again, I guess use this mindless PD that we usually get to like make it work for them.
That's awesome. I am curious, what cool relevant PD do you have next week?
So next week is kind of just like standard. We're doing project, is it Chris, whatever. So like working with kids in poverty and like all those like techniques. But after that, I was telling Kendall that I'll be in DC because it's called a Dream Deferred and it's very similar to ECOC. So it's going to be like all the same techniques. So like how to educate children of color. I'm really excited for that one.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah. So we might have to have like an episode part 2 after like this one. Yeah.
You know, one thing I really took away from educating children of color was handshaking and greeting every student at the door and offering them a handshake.
Oh
And
yeah.
I was like, that's so weird. Why would I ever do that? And I was like, dumb. That's exactly why you should do it.
Like I have students that their class be at the very other end of the school, but they make like an intent every day to come say hello, like check in on me before they go to class. I'm like, again, this is why y'all are my heroes.
I know. I get choked up, man, when kids come back.
Yes, like they're like, I'm about to be late. You tell my teacher, I say yes. Like if they count you tardy, like tell them talk to me.
Right.
Like I will.
Right. Yeah. I'm excited for your PD. Do you want to come teach in Colorado? Do you have an interest?
DPS is not listening.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, and like if you could just solve this problem, it'd be great. How do we get more educators of color, especially out here?
That is a great question. I think it's honestly just like the demographics like out there. Like, how do we just get more people of color out to the West in general? You know, I guess just like historically we've settled here, kind of like in the South, parts of the like Northeast and stuff like that. But I've got to do more research on that one. Mr. Williams does not know the answer to that right now.
Well, and it was frustrating because I realized in one of the schools where I worked, the educators of color were in service. Lunch ladies, custodians, and I was like, well, shoot, this is not, I mean, those positions are powerful. Oh my God. Yeah. But they don't see somebody that looks like them at the front of the room teaching them content. And I think that sends a different message.
Well, it's with like certain content areas too. Like most of my kids have never had a black male English teacher. Like they've been either a history teacher, a PE teacher for sure, a coach, or like occasionally like a math teacher. Like, but most of them, if you were to ask them like, who's your first black teacher? It'd be me by 9th grade.
Really?
So yeah.
I've never had a black teacher. No, I had a teacher from Africa in grad school.
Oh, wow.
I've had one black teacher.
Wow.
a friend of mine was at a school that had a ton of turnover with the teachers of color, and they would ask the teachers why they were leaving, and the teachers of color would say why they're leaving, and it was consistent, and the administration kept going, we don't know why the teachers of color are leaving. The example my friend gave was one teacher was a Black woman, and she would interact culturally with the Black students, and she was dinged for being unprofessional.
I was just about to share that. A coworker of mine had a walkthrough, and the exact word that she got on her feedback was that she didn't know how to distinguish the difference in a Black mom and being a professional, and she was treating her children too much like a Black mom would treat her children. And I was like, okay, let's talk about professionalism with that one. Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. So,
I don't know what Black culture is like from the inside because I've never been Black, but I know that sure sounds like, I don't know if the person who wrote that was white, but that sounds like how a white person would see something from the outside that we don't understand. And so we misinterpret it using the categories that we have.
yeah. And here's the thing, like, as an educator of color, specifically like a Black male educator, some days I'm big brother, like some days I'm big cousin. Like those kids need like those spaces, like, and they know, yes, he's not old enough to like be my dad, but like he's a strong male like role model that like I have missing from my life. Like, yes, he's my teacher, but I kind of need to borrow roles in my life. So I'm sorry if that's not part of the criteria for a walkthrough, then like maybe you need to adjust your criteria.
Yeah, amen. Well, and it's so true. And so I think one really powerful thing is when you end up doing walkthroughs for things like how to foster a sense of belonging. And so on this walkthrough, we're not looking at academics, we're looking at how we're fostering a sense of belonging. So when I see you talking to a student in something that I would consider a more familiar role than professional teacher student, I'm going to say that fosters a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
That contributes to the culture of our building. It's a need. And so many kids need that sense of belonging. How are you going to build it? You're going to have a relationship with them.
Yeah, you got to interact a little bit. Like, I've never got how like teachers can just like sit there and like not talk to their kids. Like if I like walk past a classroom and I can hear a pin drop, I'm like, something's going on. Like either they're in trouble or like
noisy is a loud thing. I mean, like learning is a loud thing. It's a noisy thing.
Yeah. Actually, the other day, so we do a lot of games in my class, and like security was walking by, and like I could see that he was like occasionally like circling. So I told him like to take a small break, and I was just like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And he was like, "I was about to ask you the same thing." Like they were so loud that like it was like out of concern though. He was like, "I'm making sure you were good," but then I saw you laughing with them, so I was like, "Oh, he's fine."
Well, it's like a pride thing, but when all the kids in the hallway end up walking in the slowest motion ever to watch what's going on in your loud classroom. Yes, I've engaged the hallway folks.
That and they want attention from you. They're like, "Ooh, maybe she'll notice me if I like walk really slow."
Come on in, y'all.
Yeah.
I
love those. So do you like them more than us? And I was like, no, there's no like distinguish between like, you're my former teacher. I don't like you anymore. Like everyone gets to know Mr. Williams.
It's so weird. My first fifth grade class is graduating this year.
Oh my God.
And I already had two of them reach out to me. Are you going to be at graduation? And I'm like, you just let me know the dates and I'm going to get my waterproof mascara and I'm going to be there.
Oh yeah. My very first ninth grade group graduates this year. So like, I'm not prepared at all.
Corey, has it been that long?
Actually, no, I take that back. My first 10th graders graduate this year. And then when I graduate with my EDD, my first group of ninth graders will graduate. So that one's really going to be like, I'm going to be all to pieces that month. Yeah.
Like I just stay bloodshot because I'm like,
I know.
Well, I wish both of you always be more professional and keep it locked down.
I know. Yeah, I know. What's the rule? No smiling until December or no smiling until like Christmas break? Oh my God. I was like, yeah, we're not going to do that one.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm like, if you were really explicit about your expectations and have like follow through that made sense, you could probably start smiling by like lunchtime.
That's what I'm saying. Like, or if you see how cool my kids are, like, how can you not laugh and like smile at them? Like,
Right. But I'm also going to remind you, like, here's the line, you touched it, and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, so any advice, Kathryn, for teachers who are trying to engage more with their students, or they're trying to maybe the demographic of students that they're working with, they're trying to learn more? Any advice?
Engage more. And I think this is something, so I'm going to project a little. When I am stressed and I'm thinking about me and I'm like realizing my engagement isn't there, it's because I failed to engage. It's because I got so like wrapped up in myself that I forgot about all those people in front of me that I'm
our favorite people.
Exactly. And then I realized too, if I realize I'm going to walk around a student or do something to not engage with them, whoa, my behavior is communication.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? What made me do that? And now I've realized it's with girls more than boys. I'm like so hypersensitive to boys now, and I'm like, all right, I just walked around that girl. Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Why do I do that?
Oh yeah, and they'll let you know, like in the mornings, like students will stop by. You spoke to them, but I walked past you. You didn't say anything to me. I'm like, I am so sorry. You were 6
You're right.
You're right. Like, I am sorry.
Right. Or sometimes I'll be like, hey, I gave you a head nod. Like,
yeah,
I don't remember that you really like being shouted at. So I just like gave you a nod, and I'm sorry that wasn't enough. I read that wrong. Good morning.
Yeah.
My bad.
Exactly. Like it's such a learning process.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say eat the food too. Whatever students give you, you gotta suck it up and chow down, man.
You have to, as long as it's wrapped, like individually wrapped. Like
individually wrapped. I don't know. I've eaten some weird stuff. My stomach has ended up being fine, and it has like food is the universal language.
Yeah, it is. I actually tried Takis for the first time because of my kids, and of course it was the community bag that everyone was reaching in. But like you said, it's a rite of passage.
It is.
Yeah, it was pre-COVID though, so I was like a little less worried.
Good.
There was just like normal school germs, so
just the regular immune boosting exposure.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Corey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, what advice would you give people who are traditionally trained teachers that just aren't getting it, that you can see being a career hopper?
Get to know the kids. Like as cliche as it is, like get to know them. I literally like first couple of days of school, like questionnaire, like this is my name, this is my pronouns, like these are my favorite snacks. This is how I prefer small groups. I prefer large groups. I want to work by myself. Like this is my birthday. I'm a huge birthday guy. Like sidetrack. Like if it's your birthday, we're going all out. So like, yeah. So this is how I like to be celebrated. I don't like being celebrated. If I pass a test, do not put a sticker on my paper. Like, let me get to know you. Like, yeah. And if I get anything wrong, if I pronounce your name wrong, if you prefer to work by yourself and I put you in a group, call me out. Like,
yeah,
our space. Like, this is not my classroom. This is not your classroom. We share the space together. Like, yeah.
And Corey, are you asking those questions? Like, are they in a questionnaire, or are you picking that up over the course of time?
No, it's like a piece of paper. Like, I'm actually
okay, so that's amazing. Like
it's like
leaders don't have to intuit what their people need. And I know, Kathryn, you have a questionnaire too, so that people can be secret birthday gift givers well to people and not give people things they don't want or food that they can't eat. So yeah.
One more mug.
Yeah.
I need another place to put pencils. Yeah. That whole explicit thing is what I think I've learned from teachers that has helped me the most. And for any organization wondering what to do about diversity and equity, make every single expectation explicit, because I bet that is one of the things that is if you find that people from a different culture are not being hired or sticking around your organization, I wonder how many of the expectations are unspoken. And oh, you just are supposed to know, or like, oh, you're just supposed to catch the vibe. Well, it's a lot easier to catch the vibe with people that have the same background as you. So put the expectations, make them explicit. And if you can't make them explicit, find a teacher, because they are really good at putting, or good teachers are good at making the expectations explicit and not testing on something beside what you're supposed to test on.
Yeah.
Like the test is on the content, not whether or not you like filled in the bubble correctly. That doesn't work for Scantrons, but you know what I mean? Like teachers, a good teacher knows, am I testing on the content or am I testing on your ability to do the mechanism?
That's another thing, like kind of sidebar, but like we have teachers here that are so anti multiple choice. And I'm like, why does it matter like the testing format? Like they get the content. It's easier for me to grade. Like, why are you like making this challenge like so much more difficult for these kids? Like, because I know teachers like, I would never give multiple choice questions because it makes it so much easier for them. Isn't that the point? Like,
right. If the kids show up to the test and they don't have a freaking clue, then you haven't done your job. They should get to the end of the assessment and be like, oh yeah, I got that. Wait, a little sketchy. I'm gonna come back to that one. Like, they should already know.
I don't get it. It's another mind-boggling thing.
Well, and then I wonder too, it's like, hey, as a teacher, have I decided I'm done learning? Because am I going to use multiple choice and I'm going to look at the error analysis that popped up on B, how many kids chose B instead of A? What misunderstanding is there? Like, who cares the format? I don't care about the vehicle. I just need to know you're going to get there and do something once you're there.
Yeah. And again, why did students choose A because of B? Like, 80% of us chose A. So I need to go back over that content. I dropped the balls.
Right. Ooh, haven't we all been there? Like, yikes.
We're just going to scrap this one.
Right. Like, oh yeah, y'all, I didn't teach this very well. We're going to hit this one again.
That was Mr. Wibb's fault. My bad. Like,
yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
So go ahead.
This is just as like soul filling for me. I like took notes because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm intimidated. Corey's like all this. And I ended up just like writing at the top of my list, thinking about Title I and about boys being over-identified. And I think so much of it is education has become a scarcity mindset situation. Mm-hmm. We freak out and we try to drill down and we end up squeezing so much out of it. It's like, wait.
Yeah.
We need to switch to an abundance mindset because we can build up. And so when we like flip that upside down, that's when we start singling out kids in a negative way.
Yeah, and these kids are already fighting battles. We should be asking, what can we do to make this easier for them? Like,
right.
They don't get it. Like, no one gets it. Like these kids are walking a mile to school with their 4 brothers and sisters. They didn't get dinner last night, and you're yelling at them because they don't have a pencil. Like,
well, yeah. And now, depending on what state you're in, cross my hips and make them mad.
I know.
Now, depending on what state you're in, you have to submit your lesson plans a year in advance. Like, how are you supposed to show up for your kids? You haven't even met these humans yet. But here are my plans.
I could really go on a tangent for that, but
I'm sorry. Yes, let me just get that soapbox out of here. So sorry.
Yeah, that's soapbox. Can I share the project that I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks? Kendall knows about this because she was a huge promoter. So
please do.
Yes, my birthday is in roughly 2 weeks, and most of my kids have never had a birthday party. So I'm giving them my birthday, and I did a donors choose. A lot of my kids want to be like photographers, content creators, like YouTubers, stuff like that. So I did a donors choose project to get them their own cameras, their own like kits and stuff. And so on my birthday, I'm throwing them a party. So
that's really cool. Like that gets me choked up. That's
awesome. I know. I'm like crying now.
Well, I guess your donors choose still open because every kid should get that.
It actually closed in like 48 hours. Like I had people like donating from all over. And so the box came like last week. Like, so it's been here for like a week, 10 days, something like that. And like, they're looking at the box. They're like, open it. And I'm like, nope, not yet. Like, I'm struggling not to though. Like, I really want to.
Like, get me choked up, man. Wow.
These kids are my
that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Well, right. And like, these are the people we are setting up to run our world. We are setting these people up to be our community. So why would you not pour into them? Yeah.
And something as simple as like a birthday, like, I can't tell you how many kids have been like, yeah, like yesterday was my birthday. I'm like, why didn't you say anything?
What?
And they're like, well, I never do anything on my birthday. I'm like, that's the point. I would have done something.
Sometimes I celebrate a half birthday. I'm not above a quarter birthday.
I might be doing that. Like, although a couple weeks ago, I did have like 4 birthdays, like back to back. And like, I try to be good at like, it's your day. Like, this is all for you. But that got pretty expensive really quick. Yeah.
Dude, so many grocery stores will totally give stuff to you. When I was on the Front Range, I had ended up working with a city market, which is like a burger out there. And they ended up donating a bunch of like tablecloths and candles and cake mixes and stuff.
I should reach out. Thank you for like.
Yeah. Because they want to make it happen. And then, we always sent them a picture so they could. Thank you card.
Yeah.
Worth it.
Like once they open the box, like I'm legit like wrapping this in like wrapping paper. They're like, you're overdoing this. It's probably just some like pencils or something. I'm like, nope, wait and see.
You don't know yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
So any store managers listening want to donate to Mr. Williams' classroom. He's in Danville, Virginia.
Please. Thank you.
It's true. And if you're not in Danville, Virginia, look for GoFundMe's or donor choose because they make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually did my first year. Speaking of like walking around the room and stuff, I did a donor's choose because they had like the traditional desk. And again, these kids are like 6'2", like taller than me, and they kept squirming and teachers were having a fit. And I'm like, no, they're like,
they don't fit.
So I actually got another project done for like some flexible seating and stuff, like bigger seats for them. So yeah, I love some donors choose.
I do too. And it matters. And it's like, okay, here we go with that scarcity mindset again. Like, all right, this is for the kids. I'm going to let you use it. We're going to take it out of the wrapper. Use the stickers.
Yeah. It's like, use everything, whatever you need. And I tell them, I'm like, whatever you need, communicate it. Like, we will make it happen. Like, if we have to, like, grassroots ask for donations, like, we have to write a grant, like, whatever makes education work for you, please let me know.
Well, right. And like, I'm a parent, I will never volunteer. It's not a thing I'm going to do. I work in a school. It's very like, I never know when I'm going to deal with somebody needing something. I'm never going to volunteer. What I will do is go on my kids' teachers, email, under their signature. If they have an Amazon wish list, I can send some pencil grips that you want at 11:30 at night.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to volunteer for a class party. Ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think too, like building the comfort and confidence and the norm of educators asking for what we need is hard, but a next step.
I think that like ideal is like shifting though, because like I think people are realizing like, okay, teachers do have a hard job. Like, yeah, we've been screaming this for God knows how long, but like I think it's really starting to become like part of the culture now, which I'm enjoying.
I hope it stays.
Yes, like please donate all the things to my classroom.
Right. Yeah. It's a hard job. I'm so excited. Oh yeah. Sorry, Kendall. I know. I'm just so excited to meet you, Corey.
Yeah, you as well. And thank you again for joining us today. Like this was really informative. And thank you, Kendall, for co-hosting it today.
Thanks for letting me join in. I just love Shop Talks. So thanks for letting me be part of it.
You're an educator. Yeah. You teach people.
Yeah.
Hey.
Subs matter. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Whiskey Grits and Honey. Stay tuned for the next episode.